Perfect. So here we are. Hello, hello, hello. I think we're already, here we go. Okay. So welcome you guys. We're almost near the end of summer on our Tuesday lives. I have April Harris with me today. She's a holistic health professional or practitioner, and we're going to be talking about chronic illness and I was saying to her, what I love about chronic illness and is that it's so multi-layered and multifaceted, especially the world of autoimmune disease. And so while it affects us physically, and you guys know this from some of the work I do through the Life Map, our physical health, really our body is a metaphor for our life. And so when we have this dis-ease or diseases or chronic illnesses that's affecting us, affecting every area of our life, it's affecting our relationships, it's affecting our work, it's affecting our mental, emotional, physical health. It's also affecting our spiritual health. And, you know, sometimes, and this may be hard for some people to hear or understand, but bear with me because I'm going to lead with this, is that sometimes we can find our passion in our pain. And I think this is where April came to us in her story, right? I think you were saying that this was something that you've overcome yourself. And so consider that as we go through, you know, some of the key challenges to help you manage these conditions in your life. And what I love about what I know what she's already going to go into about how to manage these things is that you don't have to have a chronic illness to implement these amazing tools that she's going to give, because what it's going to do for you, in fact, is prevent any chronic illness for coming along. So if you don't have a chronic illness, stick with us, because I'm sure you're going to get lots of tips and ahas, and you probably have someone in your life that's already experiencing an autoimmune disease. So April, I'm going to let you go and tell us all about, you know, your story and what is autoimmune and chronic illness.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm April Harris, and as Lori mentioned, I'm a holistic health practitioner. I specifically work with women with autoimmune, and this career that I have really started out as a passion project because of my own journey with autoimmune disease. And I was diagnosed with severe ulcerative colitis when I was 20 years old. I literally thought that my world had ended. It was, you know, just the most crushing experience, especially as a young person, to be diagnosed with a chronic illness. I didn't even know what that was when I left the doctor's office. And I spent years really kind of just muddling through my life and learning how to try to manage my life with chronic illness. And I realized that living with a chronic illness is so much more than just managing physical symptoms. And as you mentioned, it has a multi-layered impact on our life. And doctors, they prescribe meds to manage those symptoms. That's one layer. But you don't get any direction, you don't get any guidance on how to deal with actually living life with an autoimmune disorder. So there's a whole emotional aspect, a whole emotional layer. You go through this almost identity crisis after a diagnosis that you have no idea how to work through and how to manage. Not only the interruption of your life with the physical symptoms and how that manifests, but also the changing dynamics of your relationships. Especially if you're dating and you live with a chronic illness or an autoimmune disease, or if you're married and now you are the sick one in the family and the dynamics of your family are changing. So these are all struggles that there was no manual for, there was no guide for. So that's really how I got to where I am today. I went back to school, I studied holistic health, and I decided to create one. So that's what I do today. And I work with women to help them manage those other layers of living with autoimmune disease and how to really successfully cope with all of the challenges that come with that.
That's fantastic. And, you know, it's so needed because, you know, in my world, you know, when I say the body is a metaphor for our life, women you know, we fall into these patterns and expectations, you know, our roles, our motherhood, wifehood, you know, career woman, and we really start to live a life that is what we think is expected of us instead of what we feel is really truly our calling, or what we really truly want to do. And although there are some women who truly do live a life of um, a life that they feel called to live in that way as well, so no judgment here. But when your lifestyle starts to affect your health, that's when you start to know and see that there's a huge disconnect, because or you're not taking care of yourself well enough to manage the external expectations that you are placing on yourself, right? Because, you know, yes, motherhood is a job, and yes, your job is a job, and yes, wifing is a job, and everything else like that. But we are the ones that are driving us to fulfill whatever it is that we're doing, right? So we get overwhelmed, we get overly stressed. And I think that as we when we don't pay attention, or we I think we what we do is we drive through it, right? We're not paying attention. We don't stop and say, oh, I'm tired, I really need to take care. No, I have to bake another 50,000 dozen cupcakes for the bake sale tomorrow.
Right.
I'll just sleep when I'm dead, right? Like, we have that I can do it all mentality, and that really puts, you know, really puts us in a low energetic state.
Yes.
It starts to grind on us, and it starts to create these illnesses and diseases. And, you know, and then, yeah, and we're just looking for band-aid solutions. We're just looking for more energy. So whatever that looks like for you, right? Or we're looking for, you know, whatever we need to do to just make us feel good, like those band-aid solutions. So what are some of the key challenges that you see women really facing these days?
So I feel like you hit the nail on the head. Everything that you said, it's so true. As women, um, we tend to put a lot of pressure on ourselves to show up for everyone else, but it's really hard for us to show up for ourselves in that same way.
Mm-hmm.
When we do, we feel guilty about it. And sometimes we have this idea that self-care is, you know, face masks and spa days and getting our hair and nails done. But self-care, that's one aspect of it. It can be, but self-care is really self-love. And self-care is showing up for yourself. It's setting regular checkups with your doctor. It's getting at least 8 hours of sleep every night. It's you know, setting boundaries for yourself and for your time and your energy. That is self-care. And I find a lot of us as women, we have a hard time doing that. We have a hard time showing ourselves self-love and self-care because we feel like it takes away from what we do for our spouses or our children or our work. And as you mentioned, it's hard for us to focus on ourselves as women. So we just kind of drive through it, and our body starts to suffer because of it. And with autoimmune disease or chronic illness, there's actually over 100 different types of autoimmune diseases. And really, it's an immune system issue, but it manifests in many different ways for many different women. And it's interesting because there are over 23 million people in the US who have an autoimmune disease. 75% of those individuals are women. So
Can you repeat that? Can you repeat that again one more time?
Right? There are over 23 million sufferers of autoimmune disease in the US alone.
Uh-huh.
75% of those individuals are women. So why is that? Science doesn't have an answer. Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned, I find that a lot of women, we take on the weight of the world. We take on the problems of everyone else. And a lot of times we internalize that, and eventually that stress comes out somehow. And I often say that symptoms are messages from our body. Symptoms are messengers, and we don't want to just shoot the messenger, which a lot of medications, that's what they're designed to do. They're designed to suppress the symptoms, and that's it. But really, what is your body trying to tell you? What is your body trying to say? And usually those symptoms or those messages, I always say they start out kind of as whispers. But then when we don't listen, they get louder and louder and more intense until eventually, we're knocked on our rear end and we're forced to listen. We're forced to slow down because we didn't make that choice on our own. And I found that a lot of women actually start developing symptoms after a period of high unmanaged stress in their life. And it's very common that and a lot of different support groups that I'm in, you find that women have said, yes, I started developing symptoms after they went through a divorce or after they went through a death in their family. And maybe there was a period of time where they were kind of running on fumes. And then there was that one trigger event that kind of just blew everything up for them.
You know what? And I love that, because these are not literally external whispers she's talking about. Like, no one is going to whisper in your ear, you need to take a break right now. Like, nobody's going to do that. These internal messages, they're coming from you. They're coming from a part of you that says, say no, I don't want to do that. But for whatever reason, we feel we can't say no. There's another part of us that says, are you crazy? You have to bake cupcakes. You can't. That was me. I don't have an autoimmune, but trust me, luckily for me, I'm in the health industry. I probably should have one. But when you get that, there's parts of you that are having these dialogues with you in your head, and it's the majority of them one that rule. So when the majority of them are like, do it anyways, forge forward, do more. You can't just rest, go do the laundry. Like, what happens if somebody comes over and the house is a mess? Like, right? Like, there's all these little parts. So just to be clear, these are not external signs and symbols. The demands are external, but what happens all comes, you ultimately make the decision to do that. And when you had said, we are the ones that decide whether or not we have enough self-love and self-care and self-respect and self-restraint and self-boundaries to say no. Because sometimes we think we need to do more. We're not doing enough. But really, at the end of the day, it's what can you do less of, right? And so when you also, when you had said that it could be underlying for a long time, which is what I loved and hated about COVID, is because COVID was that final crack that just cracked this nut open of underlying issues, right? People are just sweeping things under the rug, under the rug. I can do it. Watch me do it. Aren't I amazing? Look at me. And then whack, all of a sudden you find yourself sick, or you find yourself impaired in some way, shape, or form. You're down, you're out for the count, literally. And that's the worst, because you're trying to scramble 0 to less than 0 abilities to be able to climb out of that. And so what are some of the things that people can do to really start to climb out of that diagnosis? Because that must be heavy.
Oh my goodness, yes, it is. And a lot of times people feel like they're going 100 miles an hour, a million different directions, and they just don't know how to slow down, or they don't know how to switch gears. And so it's so important, as we mentioned, to listen to those messages from our body.
I want to ask you, because this is something that probably you experienced. So hindsight, looking back, what were some of the things that maybe you were noticing? Because I'm sure someone are like, oh, I'm tired, and they're seeking solution, but sometimes they might be seeking the wrong solution, or they think it's something else. They don't know really what to look for. So, kind of what were some of the signs or whispers that you were getting that maybe you didn't even know to listen to them, right? Sometimes I'm not sitting here saying it's your fault, you didn't listen, blah, blah, blah. It's maybe you didn't know. Because obviously,
right.
If you knew, you wouldn't allow yourself to get an autoimmune disease. Who would allow themselves to get that? Nobody. It just happens. And so these are the things that we want to talk about, so that you can recognize these and do maybe the different thing. So what did you do? What did you learn or see?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, because I often think about this a lot. What would I do differently if I could go back in time before my diagnosis And at the time, you know, I had, you know, I was young, I was 20 years old. And when you're 20, you think you can just do it all. You know, you're running on Red Bull and Starbucks and 4 hours of sleep a night. But that's not sustainable.
The good old days, which they're
right. But if I could go back in time, I would tell myself to learn how to say no, learn how to set boundaries, because I did not know the meaning of the word no. I didn't know how to say no to invites. I didn't know how to say no to just different responsibilities or things that, you know, that people had put on me. I was thinking I was invincible. I could do it all. You know, I'm young. I can help you with this. And yeah, I can do that. And yeah, I can take on this project at work. And, you know, and but at the time I didn't realize that it was slowly wearing me down. So one of the common symptoms that kind of seems to overlap among many different autoimmune diseases is fatigue. A lot of times, especially in the early stages, you know, even if you do go to a doctor for it, they just kind of say, well, it's probably because you're overworked and, you know, you need to slow down, but which is true. But how do you do that? So one of the things that I actually do now, and I teach my clients to do, is to do kind of a relationship evaluation guide. And I ask them to make a list of the top 20 people that they spend the majority of their time with. And it could be your coworkers, your spouse, your kids, friends, whoever. And I want you to put a plus sign, or a minus sign next to your name, depending on how you feel after you spend time with this person. If it makes you feel more as a person or makes you feel somehow less than, or drained, if you feel energized or you feel drained. I like that. It kind of helps you to put into perspective how different ones are having an effect on you. And a lot of times you find that the majority of people that you're spending time with, or, you know, it's really having a draining effect on you. So once you know how that person affects you or how that event affects you, then you can create kind of an action plan for what to do. So for instance, and it doesn't necessarily just mean cutting people out of your life, but some women find that maybe after spending time with their children, that they feel drained. And that doesn't mean, of course, that they're going to withhold their time or their love from their children, but what it would mean would be that maybe they're going to call in help, or they're going to ask for, you know, a family member or friend to pick up the children from school one day, just so that way you can catch up, just so that way you can have time to get things done. So that way you can catch your breath. Or you're going to say no to, you know, baking 50 cupcakes for the PTA meeting, you know, so.
Go buy them.
Exactly, or buy them. So again, the first thing is self-awareness. So we have to be aware of how our job is affecting us, of how our family or our friends, how certain things that are happening around us, how they're affecting us, and then create a plan for how to move forward to reduce the negative effect that they have on us. Because there's only so long that a person can go feeling drained and feeling fatigued and feeling exhausted all the time.
Right. And people do that. Like, our relationships affect us. They affect us negatively, or they affect us positively. And when they affect us negatively, they're literally affecting our mental, emotional, and physical health. Right. And so
yes,
it's funny when you said that, I'm like, I do that when my phone rings. So when my phone rings and someone pops up on my screen, if I go like this, oh, I'm like, I don't answer it. And my husband's like, aren't you going to answer the phone? Now my secret's out. They're like, you're not answering my phone, right? Because my husband's like, aren't you going to answer it? It's this person, meaning that it's someone important in your life. And I'm like, no, they're going through something right now. And I honestly, like, I can't, I don't have it in me right now to listen. Like, I just can't listen right now. Like,
and that's a form of self-care. That's
Yeah.
a form of self-care for you.
And these are important people, right? And so and everyone has shit. I have shit too, right? So I'm sure, if that's anybody that I'm calling, that for me, that would be like, if someone's not answering my phone, it could be, a sign that, I've been overly complaining about an issue, right? But sometimes we feel obligated to pick up the phone and listen too, right? And that's because it's your mom or your sister or somebody, really, really important. But I'm telling you right now, mom, Adriana, husband, Tyler, all my friends, like it's no, like, and only because of my job too, right? Because because of the work that I do. But that for sure is a sign when you're with someone and they give you that, oh God, here we go. They got to brace them. So you got to brace yourself to be around someone like, okay, we know,
Mhm.
that is what you need to avoid.
Right.
Not because you don't
That's
love
true.
them, but because you love you.
Exactly. And it's so funny because, in today's society, we're so familiar with the term toxic relationships.
Hmm.
But I also believe that there's something called medicinal relationships. So there's also people who encourage you and encourage healing and make you feel good about yourself. And so sometimes it can be easy to identify the ones that have a negative draining,
Yep.
but also we want to make sure that that we're aware of the people in our lives that have a positive impact and that have a medicinal impact on our life, and cultivate those relationships, cultivate more of those relationships, because a lot of times it's kind of hard to just cut out the people who maybe drain us. But if we are spending more time with people who build us up and who energize us, then we're going to have less time, we're going to be less available to the people who drain.
100%. That's a fantastic point, right? Like, we are the sum of like the closest 5 people that we hang
Yes.
around, right? So you definitely want to put yourself in a position to be around people who, are high energy, positive, optimistic, that you learn from and everything else like that. Yeah, of course there's a time and place and everything, right? For the people that you can't necessarily cut out of your life, but it's only when you're mostly feeling, the bandwidth isn't there. You've already had a day and, like you just need to not answer your phone. You just need to just fill your cup and just, be brainless and watch Netflix all day or whatever.
Right. Right. So Netflix could be self-care too, right?
100%, 100,000,000%. Like if you're not being productive, okay, maybe there's something else, but yeah, when I just want to, at the end of the day, turn my brain off and escape to, some alternate world, that's what I do.
Right.
So what are some of the things? So do you have something to share? Like I know you have like a resource or, a little challenge or whatever the resource is, that free resource that you wanted to share with the group, that what was something that you had, or did you want to talk about your program and kind of like how it is that you specifically help people? How can they
Yeah.
find you? Because these are things that, we need in our lives in terms of support, right? And so as much as, we're capable, able, willing, educated, smart women, we need help. We need resources. We can't do it all by ourselves. And, it's time sometimes that we need to reach out to the professionals, the people who have already done the legwork and already are living in a place of management and solution that we can easily just come upon, right? So for the people that are watching, and so I'm trying to watch the live at the same time as doing this to see if there's any questions, because we're in another group. But to be able to offer, solutions and a product to people that they can be like, oh my gosh, finally, this is it, this is what I've been looking for all this time, right? Like I need to get a handle on this stuff. So tell us more. What have you got?
Yeah. So specifically, for instance, I do have a program that I work with women who have been diagnosed with autoimmune disease.
Yeah.
And inside my program, it's an intimate group coaching program that we do. We're actually going to be launching at the end of this month for our next session, but it is called the Autoimmune Roadmap.
Right.
Long name is the Autoimmune Roadmap to Empowered Self-Love, Abundant Energy, and Fulfilling Relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Inside that program is where we address those 3 key challenges of successfully living with chronic illness or autoimmune. So the emotional aspect, the physical aspect, and the relational aspect as well. But even for those who are not inside my program, I do actually have a free Facebook group as well that I run. It's Women Successfully Coping with Autoimmune Disease.
Mm-hmm.
Like you mentioned, it's so important for us as women to surround ourselves with other women who are going to support us and who are going to build us up and encourage us. So I definitely encourage women to find a community. Like what you do here in your Facebook group as well is amazing, because it helps women to develop that type of community and have that place where they can share and they can, give support and get support. And but one of the things that if someone is interested, I actually have created just a free quiz, so to speak. It's called the Autoimmune Readiness Quiz. And so basically it's just a free quiz that you can take to kind of see where you fall on your readiness for how well you can successfully manage your life with autoimmune, addressing those 3 different factors. So again, living with autoimmune or living with chronic illness, it's way more than just managing physical symptoms. It's also managing emotionally and managing in your relationships. So if anyone would be interested in that, I'd be happy to share that with your audience today too.
I love that, because I think that like you mentioned fatigue, right? So here's the irony in autoimmune that I kind of just want to touch upon, that, and this is in my world, and share whether you agree or not or have different viewpoints of it, is that we all need to manage self-care, right? We all need to manage our emotions. We all need to manage our mindset. We all need to manage our body in some way, shape, or form for optimal health, right? Now, in my experience, I've seen many, many women who have not been able to self-manage themselves and set boundaries and to be able to say no and go over and above and fall into illness, disease, all those things that has forced them now to have a reason to self-care. Okay. So now these women, people in general who have autoimmune disease have a reason. Now they have no choice. Go figure, right? Mm-hmm. So they're forced now to say no, which is fine. Like I have nothing against people who tie their inabilities to, sorry, I can't stay out late. I have to go home to sleep because, I have that thing that I need to rest so that it doesn't get worse. And right, like no judgment here. It's just like, great. However, if you don't have an autoimmune disease, you do not need to get one in order to give yourself the permission to say no and do self-care and not go to the party and go to bed early and eat the healthy food. And you know what I mean? Like you don't have to have a life-altering illness and disease to say yes to you and say no to other things. Because if you don't, then that's where it's going to go. Right? So we want to be as preventative as possible. So even if you don't have an autoimmune disease, I strongly suggest you join April's group, because in there, regardless, they're going to be talking about the things that you could be affected. Like if you're ever tired from doing too much, like me. If you've ever gotten a rash or eczema or psoriasis,
hair loss.
Oh God, hair loss, right? So any woman over the age of 40, right? Perimenopause, menopause, right? Like I'm going to tell you right now, guess what the prescription is for dealing with those things is rest, supplements, nutrition, right? Like all the things that you already know that you're not doing, like everybody knows you want to lose weight, you got to diet and exercise. Like we know that already, but there's things, there's bigger things at play here, right? So when you know and you still are not or can't do it, maybe you need a community of support. And this is the whole thing about, you know, holding ourselves accountable to ourselves and the expectation of self. Our community holds us to our expectations. So the people that we surround ourselves with. So if you're in this community, you have a great community of support around you, a high expectation of not of you, but a high expectation of support in supporting you to take care of yourself and put yourself first and say yes to you, and you know that you have the power and that you are empowered and that you,
And to remove the guilt.
yeah, like remove the guilt. Totally, please God, remove the guilt. Like you have the power. It's whether it's finding that community that will support you to tap into it and utilize it to your benefit, that you can live a healthy, happy, abundant, loving, nurturing, like all those things, right? Like the resources are available to you. So as you explore and as you journey and as you go through life, knowing when you come across the groups and the people that can provide you with that support without labels, because I don't care if it's autoimmune or not. Like I know at the end of the day that you got to find the community that supports you. And I think autoimmune at the end of the day is really unique to each person. And we were talking about this before, is that, you know, the eczemas and the psoriasis is like, you know, I could probably name 10 of my dearest, most, you know, success-driven, ambitious women, right? Who have something. They have a something, right? They have, you know, they're struggling with their weight, or they're struggling with their hair loss, or they're struggling with their relationship, or they're struggling with something. And so we're all going to have, you know, little challenges to overcome, right, Michelle? April, Michelle. We're all going to have these things and challenges to overcome. It's finding the support. And so I think that checklist, or what is it that you have, the test?
Yeah, it's a readiness quiz. So basically,
right.
Depending how much support do you currently have, or how much attention are you already giving to these specific areas, that it's going to enable you to successfully manage your life, you know, moving forward.
I want to do that, because I bet you that I'll do that. And even though I've never been diagnosed with an autoimmune, I bet you I have some of those symptoms already on there.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And just to add to what you said too, you know, you don't have to have developed a chronic illness to start taking care of yourself. And one of the things I hear from, you know, women is that I don't have the freedom to fall apart because everybody else around me is falling apart. I don't have the freedom to do that. And I, you know, I always say this with all the love, that if you don't take care of these issues now, then eventually you will get to a point where you don't have a choice.
That's right.
Why not take this moment now that you have a choice to do that, and do it in an empowered way, you know, do it because you decide to and not because you are forced to. So that's another way you can take your power back, is by you making that decision to better your life and to better your health, because you want to, not because your body is forcing you to.
I read an interesting article, April, about drawing a blank here, about being passed down, not genetic, or is it learned? I don't even know.
Generational?
Yes. That and a maternal pass down. So if your mother suffers from autoimmune, the chances or likelihood of you contracting, I don't know if it's genetic or if it's a learned behavior, but that, you know, it's like, oh, my aunt had osteoporosis, therefore I'm going to get osteoporosis. Different mindset. I'm just saying, I remember somebody saying to me, oh, everybody in my family had osteoporosis, therefore, you know, I'm destined to get it. I'm like, well, do you want osteoporosis? And they were like, no. And I'm like, then you're not going to get it. Like, do the things you need to do to prevent that. But I'm just,
exactly.
So I read an article all about how yeah, it's passed down somehow, genetic, or I don't know if you've heard of that or saw that.
Mhm.
So if you have these symptoms, or if you already know you have autoimmune disease and you have children, what I'm saying to you is that more reason for you to be the change you want to see for them. So if you don't want to
Break
see
the
them,
cycle. Yes.
right, if you don't want to see them live the same life, because we pattern, so we, when you open your mouth and your mother comes out, right? It's because our parents pattern teach us, they program us, right? So, and this is kind of a little bit deeper than I thought we were going to go today, but just to give you an idea that, I have two daughters. So everything that I do, I try to keep in mind, am I the parent? Am I the best parent for them? Am I the best mom for them? Am I the best version of me for them? And that doesn't mean that I always am, but I try my best to, exercise and make sure that I'm modeling, the relationship and the job and the whatever else, because I want to, I want them to know that, that's available to them, that no matter what, they have the power, they have the choice, they have the whatever else. So, sometimes, our children do it for them, right?
Mhm.
Do it for you, but if you can't do it for you, do it for them.
Exactly. And being the best version of yourself is what's best for your children. Being the best version of yourself is what's best for your spouse. It is what's best for your friends or your family or anybody else who depends on you. When you are the best version of yourself, you can show up in greater ways and you can be more present with those that you love. So really, it's not only a form of self-care, but it's also a form of love for those that you love when you take care of yourself as well, because they don't want to see you, run yourself ragged, and they don't want to see you
Miserable and unhappy
miserable.
and
Yeah,
sick and not be able to do anything. And, I it's yeah, it's giving them permission ultimately to be able to live their best life too. So,
yes.
I always try to give that perspective. So, let me just see here. So what's the one message you want to leave for autoimmune, or maybe, who could be on their way to, that lifestyle? What do you want to say to them?
So a common theme, or just the one thing really that I love for those in my community to understand and to fully believe, is that although the journey may be difficult, it can still be beautiful. And so it all depends on what type of seeds we're planting. So whether you are on this journey and you are dealing with a chronic illness or an autoimmune disease, or insert whatever type of issue here. I know in your community you have women who come from all different types of backgrounds. Even though the journey may be difficult, it can still be beautiful, but it depends on the types of seeds that we're planting along the way. So plant seeds of hope, plant seeds of self-love, and plant seeds of self-care. These are things that,
Community, yeah, and
exactly,
sisterhood, and you're not alone in any of this. Like,
exactly. The types of seeds you plant are the types of seeds that will flourish. So, and it's important, especially to have that community and to have that support or that guide to kind of help you rip up the weeds of self-doubt that inevitably will come up, along the way as well. So again, you don't
and
have
that you're not broken. Can we tell them you're not broken?
you are not broken.
You're
You
not
are not
broken.
broken
You're not
at
broken.
all.
Just take
Exactly.
better care. Everything will get better with you, how you were saying, planting seeds and, having a little bit of self-forgiveness and doing the best that you can with the skills and tools that you have.
Yes.
We hope you find the support that you need, whether it be in April's community or of course, you guys are in my community already, but, I'm bringing you guys all these professionals, all these people, so that I can give you completely like 360 degrees of perspective in terms of how to address and manage living your best life in whatever way, shape, or form that means for you and your family and your community. And so thank you so much, April. And then so you send me the links, or you can share them in the comments, whatever it is that you want. And then And then that's it. So I think this is a really great place to end today's little live podcast. So thank you again. And don't go anywhere because I'm going to log off Facebook Live. So thanks guys for watching. Next week is our last Tuesday one. And then for the fall, we move to Fridays. I think for the next couple of weeks, we're continuing with autoimmune. So because it's really important. And I think that it's a really big issue that needs to be addressed. There's not enough out there. So I'm scouring, right, the professionals as they're starting to come to light. I'm finding them that are going to give you guys the best support and solutions to help you manage all your stuff. So thanks, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.